Okay, I think we are live. So I guess I watched Lawrence of Arabia because you, George, said that you were watching it. So I mean, why is it? How did you come across the movie? Why is it that you watched it? I guess.
How did
Well, I would say the reason is well,
Watched
I've heard
Lawrence
of.
of Arabia because yeah.
Oh, I can hear myself. So, as I was saying, the reason is I've heard of Lawrence of Arabia through some circles being it's a good movie, and in fact, my brother personally recommended Lawrence of Arabia, so I figured, why not? I'll give it a go.
Lawrence of Arabia is probably in the 60s in America. They made a number of epic movies that were like these, very much like this. There was also Ten Commandments. These very, very ambitious, at the time, very expensive productions, oftentimes centered in Arabia and places like that. And this is by far the most famous of them. This is by far probably the best of them. Ben-Hur is up there as well. Uh, this is one of the greatest movies ever made.
Absolutely.
Hmm. I see. So I guess what about the historical figure which this is about? Lawrence. I mean, do people just know him because of the movie, or do you feel like people have forgotten him by now? Yeah,
M-
because yeah, go on.
My, I mean, I've never looked terribly much into Lawrence aside from uh, this, but my impression, aside from looking at background for the movie, but my impression of him is that he's something of a political footnote. He did write an account of the war in England not long after, and I think it at least sold pretty well.
Yeah,
One of those things where he was a lot more well known in his time, like in the World War One to World War Two era, that in between era. Afterwards, obviously, you had other issues, and the other thing is naturally as once the Arab states even went independent and still had a lot of issues, I imagine Lawrence had less relevance. His whole story is very much one of these things. I mean, it's like the movie. It's one of these untold success stories that ended up petering out that they just couldn't put something together. And the end result was, of course, Sykes-Picot, British, French, coming into rule for another 2.5 decades or so until after World War II, and then they just sort of started slowly leaving after that.
I mean,
another thing.
yeah, go on. Sorry.
I would say another thing to note is partially the reason why the movie existed is basically the movie is sort of a adaptation of what is known as the Seven Pillars, which is basically Lawrence's account of his experience in Arabia.
Yes.
I mean, so I guess in preparation for this, I watched a bunch of videos about Lawrence and about the film.
Mhm.
I couldn't find
Mhm.
any good reviews, really. Mm,
Really, that's surprising.
Hmm.
yeah, I mean,
If you just search up Lawrence of Arabia analysis, I'm sure you'll find stuff.
I don't know. Like what I found were people just retelling the whole story and saying
Hmm.
how it's such a great movie. And
Hmm.
the other thing, and I don't know, the reasons which they gave was the visuals look nice, whatever. Yeah, I mean, I guess this discussion. I mean, do you think? I don't think that we know that much about the historical figure anyway, but from what I've heard, maybe some of the things which he said that happened didn't really happen. For example, for some reason,
The
yeah, go on.
I believe the massacre shown at the end was a real event.
Yes, that was real.
Yeah.
What wasn't real, I've heard that so the battle at Aqaba, that I mean that was real, but it wasn't as epic as that, and it was mostly won by because of the British provided support by the sea, because keeping them occupied. Uh,
Yes.
and also, for some reason, a lot of the videos going over the historicity made a point of saying that that scene where it is implied, and in his book The Seven Pillars, he actually does say that he was sexually abused by a Turk general or something. For some reason, a lot of the reviewers made a point of saying that that probably did not happen. I'm not sure like how you could
Yeah.
verify whether that
Yeah.
happened or not.
Yeah, it would be pretty hard to verify regardless. But that scene in this movie is sort of the breaking point and the turning point for Lawrence. It is quite explicitly the turning point for Lawrence, where he goes from thinking that he is totally invincible to where he realizes that he is completely human and fleshy, and his will cannot override all pain.
Yeah. I mean, is this supposed to be like a tragedy or something? Would you agree?
Is this supposed to? Yes, yes,
It
it's
is a
supposed to be
tragedy.
a tragedy.
It
It
is.
ends. It opens with his death.
I mean, I guess. I mean, is the movie saying that then what he did was meaningless?
No,
No.
no. Well, it's not trying to explicitly say anything.
I mean, I guess is that the feeling that you get then?
That
Mm.
you could come away with that
Good, yeah.
feeling that that despite his trials and tribulations, that it was sort of a false start. But there is something of a message where some of that is Lawrence's fault. He went around, he wasted his time on the massacre. He was unable to get to Damascus before the British, and even once there, he was so emotionally compromised by that point, he didn't have the same power of leadership that he once did.
So I guess one of the questions which comes up. I mean, so first of all, the reason why I started this by discussing a bit about the character, about Lawrence himself, is because the movie itself. I think it's after they show his death. They show his funeral as well, or rather the aftermath, people leaving the church,
Yes.
and it's people discussing whether like they're really like is anything to this Lawrence character, whether it was all just I guess what you would describe as manufactured non-event, whether the
Hmm.
Arab revolt was just a manufactured non-event.
Hmm.
And I think the movie very much did give a feeling that yeah, probably the Arabs would have been fine with by being ruled by the Ottomans, and this was just the whole revolt was just astroturfed and funded by the
The
British.
thing,
Yeah, sorry, go on.
but there were people among the Arabs who were already fighting for independence. It was King Faisal, and I always blank on whether Omar Sharif is the name of the character or the actor. Yeah, that's the name of the actor. He plays.
I think
Uh,
Ali Sharif or something. It's still Sharif, I think.
Yeah.
Ali Sharif. Oh, that's very non confusing. Yeah, Sharif Ali.
Yeah, Sharif Ali.
Yeah, there's that great opening scene where he is introduced.
I guess speaking of a lot of the reviewers, I noticed when praising Sheriff Ali, one of the reasons that they praised him for was for actually being an Arab, because for some reason um, I can't remember the other Arab character's name.
Yes,
Oh
every
yeah.
other Arab character, Prince Faisal is of course Sir Alec Guinness, uh, and yeah, the Arab, essentially almost mercenary that they come across. Yeah, Turkish Bey is played by Jose Ferrer, a Puerto Rican actor.
I mean, I don't know. It's not some. I didn't feel like the fact that those actors were not Arabs necessarily detracted from the film in any way. Really.
No,
No,
me neither.
and it's one of those things where it's actually quite impressive. Both of them look quite the part, and admittedly, it is easier with Sir Alec Guinness's character because King Faisal is Hashemite and I believe like fairer skinned as far as Arabs go, but even the the other character, Turkish Bey, you wouldn't necessarily. I mean, maybe you could tell he's done up a little in brown face, but it's not that noticeable, and he very much looks the part. Which actually makes it funny that Lawrence ends up walking in and getting screwed over because he, I guess, couldn't even put up the same makeup they had for the actors.
So.
It has been a point of controversy in modern day that, oh
Yeah,
my
that
gosh, they had characters of a different race portraying characters of another race and
I
all
mean,
that stuff like that.
that's just
yeah.
21st century leftist trash
Yeah,
talking point.
So,
pretty much.
so I guess another question which comes up in the movie itself is, in, I mean, who is Lawrence supposed to like? What is his motivation? Who is he loyal to? Um, like, why does he bother? Do you feel like that is adequately explained, George?
I would
Lawrence.
Yeah.
Oh,
I would say the reason why he's so interested is he has this romantic idea of Arabia and the Arab people being such great and noble people. Well, aside from his whole "you are funny people, you are barbaric." Aside
yes.
from that, he thinks that the whole culture and the whole society is some kind of majestic thing, and
He's. Yeah, go ahead. I
and
was just going to say he's fascinated by them.
yeah, and it also is a point of contention from King Faisal that he says, "Oh, you think our people are funny people to just control and play with?"
Oh,
Yeah.
when King Faisal says that, he is being quite he's being mostly facetious. Although he's well aware that the average Englishman might operate that way, he is mostly saying that to him to point out to Lawrence the fact that Sheriff Ali is indeed working for him and transmitted everything that encounter over to King Faisal.
I mean, I kind of got the feeling also though. So I guess this is not exactly relevant to the movie because they don't say this in the movie. But apparently, the real role Lawrence got interested, or rather, was in the Middle East in the first place because when he was young, he was interested in the Crusades. And so in university, I believe, he was able to he had to go to work as an archaeologist in the Middle East, but he wasn't really there to look at Arab stuff. He was there to look at stuff left by by the Crusaders.
Mm.
Which is kind of ironic that he sort of ends up in a kind of a jihad to create another, I guess. I mean,
But the
yeah,
Crusades themselves were a form of jihad as well, so
Yeah.
it's not so
yeah.
ironic.
But what I mean is that he's not fighting. He's not fighting on the side of the Christian empires there. Exactly.
No, well, in a way he is. He's fighting to tear down the Turkish Empire that was that was the one that had so threatened Europe for many centuries, but now was, of course, on the decline, and he was helping to put the bullet in the end of that, and as a result, help the Arabs to gain some measure of independence or have
Yeah.
kingdoms of their own.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, he's not exactly. If he had a choice, it seems like he would have preferred the Arabs to run their own affairs rather than the British
Oh,
to
of
do
course,
that.
of course.
I guess another point which came to mind is that I mean, you say that, and he also says that uh, he- that he's fascinated with their culture and everything. But I also got the feeling that um, he's also kind of imposing his own values on them, and that would basically end up changing them from what they are, because he wants them to become a state, a nation state, and also like he has a problem with a life for a life, that sort of thing, and he also
Yes,
he also wants to destroy the differences between the tribes.
there is the contrast in this movie between East and West, and Lawrence represents the Western Faustian ideal in all its glory and in all its tragedy. He goes into this like the famous scene, of course, is the one where they finally cross the Nefu Desert, and they find out that there is one man who's been left behind, just a simple man. No one in particular important, no one who deserves special recognition, just a single man. And the Arabs among them say, "Oh well, this was God's will. There's nothing that can be done about it." This is the Arab mindset. Everything that happens, it is because of God's will. It's not. But we have our own will, but it is limited. God's will predominates. It is Lawrence that goes in and he tells them nothing is written. And so he turns his camel around. He rides through the scorching desert heat, manages to pick out this man. It's not entirely clear how long it takes for him to find him and turn back, but at least half a day, possibly most of the day, after already walking the entire day at night. And it is this great triumphant scene where already Lawrence had done the impossible in terms of crossing the desert, and then he also does it here in terms of bringing the man out, and he quite poignantly tells the other Arabs and Sheriff Ali once he arrives there, quote, "Nothing is written." And that is Lawrence's view. His view is that of essentially the European view in extremis, the idea that you can overcome, and that if you cooperate, your greater peoples can become something greater. That there is a sort of a higher cause in being unified together, which was, I guess you could say, the original how Islam originally spread.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, but then he ends up having to kill the same man that he had to save So maybe
Yes.
maybe
Yeah.
it was
Yes,
written after all. Yes.
yes, that's one of the that's one of the parts of the movie where this same man ends up being responsible for starting a shooting between two Arab peoples, and Lawrence has to put him down. Uh, and it's interesting. You have on the one side, uh, Sheriff Ali, who has really come to admire and respect Lawrence. He is the one that's doesn't want to view too much of it. He said like that it just happened, whereas it's Turkish Bey who is the Arab leader. Not really an Arab leader. He was like formerly a functionary that a functionary is the wrong term. He was a tribesman leader that worked for the Ottomans, and Lawrence got him to switch sides. But he still views himself as a tribesman for his own tribe, for himself and for his own smaller people, but not for any greater people. And as a result, he's the one who says to them, it was written, you should have left him in the desert. Again, you see that contrast in worldview there.
So George Orwell wrote an essay about nationalism, and in it he said that left wingers are also nationalists, but basically they are nationalists for other countries other than their own. I guess.
Usually,
Yep.
yes.
So I mean, do you get this feeling with Lawrence as well? I guess.
Well, that's actually a very old occurrence. Back in the 1760s, 1750s, Corsican independence and Corsican nationalism was a cause célèbre in England. In the middle of the 19th century, Greek nationalism was similarly a cause célèbre for the Greeks to push the Ottomans out of their lands, as was Italian nationalism as well. And then, and Lawrence here is playing into that same mindset of the. Although I don't think there were any other examples of foreigners being nearly as accomplished in successful national revolts as there had been with Lawrence. He was truly one of the guys spearheading this.
I mean, I guess I got the feeling that basically nationalism in a lot of these places was kind of exported by Europeans into these places. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any nationalism.
To a certain extent, yes, they were essentially from the perspective of the lay peoples. And again, this is Turkish Bey. Turkish Bey is the alternate perspective. He is the one who is most interested with his tribe, his local people, and he wants to just deal with them. But then you have leaders like King Faisal and Sheriff Ali as well, who see this, and they realize that this emphasis on only the local tribe, being the highest level of group bond, that this has left the Arabs to be the playthings of higher powers. And they really, really resent this. And so they view Arab nationalism as a vehicle in order to make it so that the Arabs, quote unquote, as a group, have more power, cannot be pushed around, and at the end of the day, will not be slaves to the desert and to those who controlled the desert, always slaves to a greater empire.
Yeah, I guess the idea there was to have a massive Arab state, right?
Yes, Arab nationalism would become was a big movement, like even after this in the 1950s and 60s. Famously, Nasser of Egypt was a big man pushing for this, and you had this dream of like Iraq and Syria were one state for a while, and ideally they wanted like Egypt, Iraq, Syria, and all those to be one big, yeah, giant Arab superstate. And yeah, it never quite panned out the way it wanted, but even I'd say even to this day, I'd say maybe less so, but let's say like 10 years ago, even then, the dream of Arab nationalism was still still viewed on and still something of a political force in those regions.
Because I guess I a lot of leftists blame the instability in the region because of the borders, which I guess what they're implying is that if it was one massive Arab empire, it would be more stable. But I I kind of doubt it. It seems to me,
Yeah.
if anything, it seems to me that the problems are caused because the current Arab states formed. They are too large, and there's too many different groups in them. So making an even larger empire, I don't know. Uh,
Yes, it is the same issue that Lawrence has in this movie, where he is trying to get them to coalesce around a greater state, a greater movement, and a number of them would rather be, again, have their loyalties to their smaller tribe. But the issue with having those smaller loyalties is that, as I went over, like, you would have essentially, if you try to transplant that into modern day, you'd have tiny statelets all over the place that would then end up getting conquered by some greater empire.
yes. So basically, a thousand Arab Liechtensteins or something. Uh,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, yeah. I also got the feeling that people like Faisal and all the other Arab leaders there, um, uh, because like especially in our corner, little corner of the right, there are some people who think that having clan-based loyalty is a good thing.
Hmm.
The nation state is just a leftist invention by
Yes.
Yeah.
people like Lawrence.
Hmm.
But here you kind of see that that clan-based allegiance is kind of a clusterfuck.
It can be, yes, and yes, you have a lot of there is a lot of it does lead to a lot of conflict and a lot of petty conflict. Oftentimes, conflict over small things. The opening scene with Sheriff Ali is this wonderful take. Was apparently was very hard to create. They to deal with all the footsteps where Sheriff Ali is riding in from million miles away from almost a mirage, and he shoots Lawrence's, I guess you could say, translator and guide. And he says, he was of the rival tribe, Beni Hazet or something. Uh, he had no right to this water. Uh, and Lawrence is just sort of. He's somewhat aghast, but more than aghast, he is indignant. He is totally and completely indignant at this. and he calls Sheriff Ali a murderer for doing such a thing. He doesn't see why
Yeah, basically, he sees the differences between the tribes as imagined rather than real, whereas they are very real for the Arabs. They were very real for the Arabs, I guess.
Well, it's also a matter of the water is open to Lawrence, but at the same time, if the other man, the rival tribe member, should drink from the well, it is death. And Lawrence finds this completely incomprehensible. He finds it like petty, vengeful, all those sorts of natural reactions. And that's where he tells Sheriff Ali that, as you mentioned, that as long as the Arabs act like this, as long as they turn tribe against tribe, you shall be a little people, a, a wicked people, greedy, barbarous, and cruel, as you are.
But I guess the alternative then is just to become just like the English, in effect. Um, a greater people, but at the price of shedding uh, those very real differences between the tribes, I guess.
Shedding some of them, yes. And that is the inherent conflict in the movie and in reality, is those smaller affiliations are ultimately what bind people and give them happiness. But too much emphasis on them uh, does lead to a certain level of powerlessness compared to dealing with other powers. But at the same time, once those bonds are dissolved entirely, then it leads to atomized individuals who are even more powerless against the central government than those tribal members were against rival empires.
Yeah,
that
you can
control
basically
them.
see it in the type of warfare that they wage as well. So basically, the Arab tribesmen are good fighters, and as long as they're fighting, I guess 1-to-1 or something like that. But when they are fighting against the more organized and collectivistic modern warfare, it seems like because like they only care about the loot and stuff like that. So for example, I can't remember his name, but when one British officer says that like that basically he's there because he's loyal to Britain or something, um, and he wouldn't just leave after getting the loot. um,
Yeah, I think it's Colonel Brighton you're thinking of. There's Colonel Brighton and General Allenby.
we don't get to see much of the Turks. I mean, I kind of got the feeling.
No.
I got
No.
the, yeah, exactly. I kind of got the feeling that it's because did it really matter what Lawrence and the Arab revolt were doing against the Ottomans that much?
Well, you have
Yeah.
Well, you have to understand, this movie is not about the Arab Revolt per se. This movie is about Lawrence. This movie is about Lawrence as a personality, Lawrence as someone who gets infatuated with his own myth, Lawrence as someone who is angered somewhat at the way the English push around the Arabs or sort of keep them out of their sphere and their world, even while pushing into the Arabs' world. And this film is about Lawrence. It's not particularly about the Turks themselves or their own declining empire. The Turks are almost a backdrop. I don't think you even see any Turks other than their general soldiers here and there.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
guess there's that one
by the way,
general.
I think that the bounty which Lawrence claims that was placed on his head by the Turks, by the Ottomans, it wasn't real. He just claims it, but from what I've heard from the History Buffs video, at least, it seems that this is just something which he claims in the Seven Pillars, but there's no evidence for it. So the Turks probably didn't really care about Lawrence.
Who knows? I don't
Yeah.
know how well preserved records would be from that time. I imagine not. I'd
Well,
imagine not
yeah.
particularly, but who knows?
Well,
Uh,
I,
it would be good PR. I'd admit it would be very good PR.
I guess from what I get though, um, Lawrence is a lot more popular in the West than in actually in the Arab world, and
Well,
I
he's a European
Yeah.
hero.
yeah, but of course, but no, like if he had actually had an effect, then he would be more popular there as well, I guess.
Yes.
I guess what was my point? Yeah, the Americans. So I guess if I'm not mistaken, there's only one American, the
Yes.
journalist.
The American journalist, yes. And he's basically he calls the British themselves slim customers. That also describes him pretty well. He's basically just here to create a story. He is very upfront about how I mean, this goes to the fact that journalists have always been, I guess you could say, two-timers,
Yep.
bloodsuckers. He's at least only a two-timer. He is here to tell his story, his magnificent story, uh, and he doesn't particularly care what the story is, but he's just looking for a story. And Lawrence, from his perspective, is a story. Lawrence is a personality through which he can make all these news reports, through which he can make a big deal for himself for his newspaper,
And also,
and make Lawrence into a superstar.
yes, and I also believe that he said that, at least to Faisal, he said that he wants something to convince the Americans to get involved in the war.
Oh, yes, because of course there
Yeah.
were powerful interests pushing for America to get into the war.
So I
Some
guess,
things never change.
yeah,
Yeah, things didn't change.
and I kind of get the feeling that basically Lawrence himself is just a pawn, um, just an entertainer essentially, in the hands of the British government and the other powers.
He's
That's a feeling that you
he,
kind of get.
he's being used as a pawn, but it is not inevitable that he should be only a pawn. He is someone who very much could have pushed who could have come out from under them, and
But he didn't.
but he
I,
didn't.
yeah. Let's. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
she
So
also mentioned the
Oh no,
fun
Anthony
fact.
Quinn is yeah.
Oh,
Go
why
ahead.
not you mention it? Originally, Lawrence of Arabia was going to be about the journalist, was going to be focused on the journalist and how he learns about Lawrence originally.
Interesting. The movie originally was
Yes.
okay. Yeah, but yeah, this movie is partially well known because of this is director David Lean, and David Lean did a number of other epics, which were pretty much all from the British Empire's lens. He did Bridge on the River Kwai, which was about a number of British POW officers essentially resisting Japanese pushes and oppression in POW camps in Burma. And there was, I forget the name of it, but there was also a film. It was the last film he made about India and some of the British influence there. Very much a man who, passage to India. You could just tell that he was a man who was fascinating. Oh, he also did Doctor Zhivago, another classic film. Which
So, George, would you describe Lawrence of Arabia as a left-wing film?
Hmm. I
why
suppose
do
you could picture it that way. I mean, it's basically saying the message that all of what Lawrence did was for absolutely nothing.
I think it's a disservice to classify it in such simple
I mean,
categories as such.
are you saying that just because you don't like the left, so they can't possibly have made anything anything good?
No, because I don't view it as, well, left and right are somewhat fungible over time, but one, I would view it as a mistake to classify it as strictly left wing, because on the one hand, it does come through. Even in the scenes where David Lean is somewhat showing the ways in which the British do plan on taking over, the scenes where you have the music playing and the march going, there is this unmistakable fondness for the British Empire and its mannerisms and its culture in those scenes.
So, so it's a center-left film, I guess.
I guess you could say that.
Because I guess you do get. I mean, not all left wingers are unpatriotic. There's people like Orwell who I guess would basically take the view of somebody like Lawrence. I would say, like, okay, I'm still patriotic towards the empire, but I basically don't want people to force people to be in the empire.
To Britain and to other things.
And to other things, yeah, and the left, and the Arabs.
And that is sort of the inherent tension there, is how much of this is Lawrence's own desires for another people, and how much of this is something of a sublimated desire for his own aggrandizement to become something great.
Yeah, so basically,
It is interesting. At the very start of the movie, he is this very foppish character. He is particularly disliked by the general staff. The other officers see him as something, I don't know, it was a funny character, and he in many ways he comes across as almost somewhat pathetic. Someone who has been holed up too much, who has been reading too many good books, and has not been out in life. And so he goes out into Arabia, into this desert, and by the time you hit the center point, around where the intermission starts, and where he's talking with the British generals, and he's talking about strategy and whatnot, he is a completely changed man. He is completely upright. He knows completely what he wants. He speaks quite directly to the other general and makes demands. And he also does a number of daring things. And the big scene in that is where he takes this little Arab boy that he's had these two little Arab boys as companions. And I believe they're bastards, or their parents died, or something like that. And so they were generally sort of tolerated by the Arab tribes, but not particularly not particularly accepted or anything like that. And it's Lawrence who takes them under his wing. He has this Western mindset of it doesn't matter what your background is. You're a human being. I want you to be accepted, at least by someone. And he brings them in. And one of the boys does end up dying in some quicksand, and that's why he makes a point of he is going to bring this other boy in and treat him just the same as anyone else.
Yeah.
And to everyone else, this is kind of scandalous. You have the Europeans here, there's the others there. There's probably also something of an undertone
Yeah, I mean
where
that's sort of where I got that maybe that this is a left-wing film because the hero makes a point of, oh look, we're all equal, aren't we, or something.
no, it's not. It's not necessarily in. You could take it that way, but it's not necessarily that we are all equal. But he just wants, yeah, I guess you could say he wants the same dignity or the same right to go into those premises as he has.
So, George, do you think Lawrence is a masochist or a sadist?
I don't know about in real life, but the way that the movie implies, especially in the beginning scene where he shows the lighter trick, it seems to imply that he is a bit of a masochist.
Because there's another.
Yes.
After killing the boy, I think he says to his Brit, and he comes back to the British side in Cairo. He says to the British general that he thought that he enjoyed having killed the guy that he had to save, the Arab he had to save.
Yes. Lawrence is the type of person. I'd say he's very repressed in a lot of ways. Especially about his darker side. And he's very idealistic. He very much has this view of he doesn't like the dirtiness of war. He doesn't like on almost like on a spiritual moral level. He doesn't like the, I guess it's dirtiness. So when he ends up shooting another man and he finds he enjoys it, another man might notice this and be somewhat perturbed by this, but find a way to cope with it. Lawrence, because of who he is absolutely horrified at the fact that he would take pleasure in this violence.
Speaking of dirtiness, didn't he say that the reason why he liked to the journalist, to the American journalist, when the journalist asked him why he liked the desert, why do you like the desert, Lawrence? I think Lawrence answered because it's clean.
It's clean.
Is it clean though? I don't know.
I don't know.
So
I tend to think sand, it gets everywhere.
Of course.
oh yeah, that meme, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Which, speaking of, in the film Prometheus by Ridley Scott, that Alien sequel, the character of David specifically tailors himself after Lawrence in this movie, and it shows that character watching and observing Lawrence in this movie and tailoring his mannerisms around Lawrence. It's an interesting note.
I remember seeing somebody compare this to Dune for some reason.
I can definitely see why. You have the same spirit of the young European hero coming into the desert, mingling with the desert characters, and then leading a desert revolt Although, of course, in Dune, that revolt is ultimately much more successful. It's very much the same story. I mean, it's no secret that, well, the Fremen, you can view them as Arabs, you can view them as Cossacks, but either way, sort of that same general area of the world.
So it's cultural appropriation. I see.
Uh,
Um, Going back to the movie, mm, um, I guess the visuals hold up. This was
oh, do they hold up? Do they? Most beautiful film ever, one of the most beautiful films ever filmed. Do the visuals hold up?
I wouldn't say so much they hold up as, oh, you can't really recreate the same way. It's perfection.
I think
Yeah.
I posted a video. I don't know if you saw it by some guy saying that the film should be remade. The Lawrence of Arabia should be remade with modern CGI, and it would look better.
No! No!
No.
No! No! Whoever says that, just they're trash. Their opinions are trash.
I
Throw them out into
suppose
the
what you could
desert.
do at most.
Throw them out into the middle of the Arab desert.
I
Let them
think
live like Lawrence.
I think McAlloy replied with, "Why is it illegal to kill people?"
Good question.
Um, so going back to the movie,
you see, only murder is illegal, and murder means an unjustified killing.
yeah, if they're stealing your water from your well, then it's then it's justified. So after the rape scene, yeah, I mean it's not really, we don't really see it, but which is for the better.
Yeah.
Yeah, even it doesn't show much. Yeah, it doesn't show anything, but it implies everything that's about to happen stylistically. And at the time this was made, even a scene like that was considered somewhat scandalous to show and have depicted in that way. But I still think overall it's quite tasteful in the way it's handled. And it is shown as this like really disgusting and barbarous act that he is.
Do you think that he kind of walked into it because he thought he was like an anime protagonist or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the quite explicit point of the film. Is he doesn't even attempt to hide himself. All of the others say like, "Hey, we're actual Arabs. We could pass for someone. There is no reason you, Lawrence, have to go in there and do this scouting mission. Any one of us could do it. But Lawrence, you have blue eyes, bright blue eyes that stick out that anyone is going to notice."
Yeah, I kind of got the impression that he thought that, I don't know, he was going to go there and be welcomed like Jesus or something. And I don't know, because I think before he got caught, he was talking about how he needed to find a place to talk to people or something.
Well, he sees himself as invincible. Completely, utterly invincible. You see this in a earlier scene where after they overtake a train, an Ottoman train, and raid it, there's a single Ottoman soldier that survived. And the Ottoman soldier pulls out his Mauser, C90, and he starts shooting at Lawrence. And Lawrence is like shot once in the arm, and then he gets up and he just starts staring down this soldier as he wildly and accurately shoots at Lawrence. Lawrence doesn't even flinch, he just stares him down, doesn't even attempt to go after this man. And eventually it's one of his allies that cuts him down. and it's a real show of how at this point how narcissistic Lawrence is, and also how out of touch with reality he is. Like, it is one thing, and many do. It is, and it is necessary to have a certain uh, contempt for death, or at least
Courage? I don't know.
no agnosticism towards death. Sort of like you don't care about death. It is necessary for a hero like Lawrence in his capacity to a degree to not care about death, but to act in the manner he did there shows an absolute, like, complete, being completely out of touch in terms of what danger is.
Yeah, he thinks it's
And
Goku. He thinks it's Goku, and the bullets are just going to bounce off
Yeah.
of him.
yes,
Let's see. Um, so after the rape, he decides to, like, okay, he realizes, okay, I'm not an Arab. I finally realized.
well,
Yeah, go.
it's more than the idea that he's not an Arab. It's at that point he basically freaks out and he goes. He thought that from the beginning his view was that of mind over matter, that a man could overcome any level of pain, any level of discomfort, and that scene was so shocking to him that the courage, his own belief in his invincibility, goes out of him. He doesn't feel like an invincible ideal anymore. He feels like a man,
Hmm.
and a very frightened man at that.
I mean,
And so
but I also get the feeling that if he didn't have that ideal, then he wouldn't have even gotten as far as he did.
no, he would not have. No, of course not. And that's the tragedy of it. He is someone who could not have gone so far without his own ideals, but he became so attached to him that even this momentary fall of grace, it really breaks him. And the first thing he does is he goes back to the British General Office and he demands, "I want to be let out. I don't want to be a soldier anymore.
I
I
mean,
want to have a nice."
up to this point, it makes a lot of sense. But why is it that he suddenly changes his mind and decides to go back? Um, I mean, why does he change his mind? I mean, he has abandoned his ideals, so why does he keep on pushing regardless afterwards?
I mean, I've been talking a lot. Do you want to take this, George?
Um, I would say partially the reason why, even though he's basically a broken man, he's still doing what he's doing is because even though he's broken and he's hopeless, he's part of him still believes, oh, I can unite the Arab world. Even with even with all the things that happened to me, I still need to unite the Arab world.
I'd say also he is very much intimidated into doing otherwise. He has l- rather little choice in the matter. He still technically has a choice, but everyone around him is pushing him back into it, So, uh, oh yeah, the General Allenby even gives him a lecture on him having a destiny or something like that.
I kind of
And,
yeah. Go on. Sorry.
and yeah, he is brought back in on the ideal of, okay, maybe I still can bring the Arabs to revolt. Maybe I still can bring them to have their own independence, especially this becomes a turning point if we get to Damascus. But Lawrence himself has completely changed at this point. He surrounds himself with a number of Arab tribesmen who are basically known as the best fighters, but also cruel murderers. And Sheriff Ali is especially taken aback by this because Lawrence castigated him at the start of the film for being a murderer. And here Lawrence is now surrounding himself with men far worse than Sheriff Ali.
I mean, so I guess is he doubling down on his ideals at this point? Like, okay, doesn't matter what the means are, still achieve the goal. Or maybe he has abandoned the
I don't.
ideals, but he hasn't abandoned the goal. So he doesn't think that he's going to convince the Arabs, but he thinks, yeah, I'm just going to pay off these guys um, to
Well,
achieve the goal.
those men are his own personal bodyguard. And they're also the ones that lead him into the massacre. It's actually well set up, where it's one man. They come across a Turkish raiding party, which apparently massacred some village or something like that. And there's this one Arab man who that was his village, and so quite understandably, that one man rides off to attack the raiding caravan and is shot. And Lawrence, he has two choices at this point. He can avenge this man, or he can ride on to Damascus. And it's Sheriff Ali who tells him, look, we have to get to Damascus before the British. This is what's necessary for us to really have a chance at setting up our own government, making sure we have control of everything. This is what's most important. This one act of revenge isn't important. And it's Lawrence and the actor, I believe it's Peter O'Toole. Yeah, is brilliant in this, where you see this sort of unhinged expression come over Lawrence, and he starts yelling, "No prisoners!" and he just go nuts. And I think he's only very reluctantly gets into pulls into the war. Only very reluctantly is talked back into battle, but I think a lot of it also is he's achieved this taste for blood, for conflict, and for battle. And what I think it disturbs him at a great level that he knows that he can't live without this anymore. That this is a part of him now.
So, George, do you think that the British government should have punished Lawrence for the massacre?
I would say no. I mean, he did sort of instigate, but at the same time, regardless if he ordered the command or not, they were going to massacre the Turks regardless.
Given the circumstances, these Turks themselves had already massacred a village. You could very much see it as
An eye for an eye.
I've heard
an eye for an eye. Yes, the oldest of laws, and yeah, I say in general, when you are a general of a military, you need to have a certain view of favorability towards your men and towards the hardships that they are going to go through. And whatever you may feel about what they did, unless they commit acts that are truly egregious, that are completely unjustified by what the other party is doing, etc., you should not step in to try and punish them, and that's generally the take the British generals make, which is quite correct. I don't think they even bring it up ever in the movie, any even thinking of any kind of formal complaint. But it's also the striking moment that I guess you could say sort of destroys the international image. The American photographer is there, and he uses it as essentially a way to paint Lawrence in this very contemptible light.
No, I don't think so. I don't think. I mean, that
Well,
at
the
least in real
American.
life, I don't know. I mean, I don't know about the movie, but
Well,
I
I'm talking the movie. I'm not talking real life.
yeah, but I don't know. I feel like even in the movie, it's implied that he's still because it's of the war, he's still going to put a positive spin on it. Um, oh, do you
No,
not feel that? Yeah.
the
Well,
photographer in that moment, he has some line where he's like disgusted, and he says like, "I'll take your damn picture."
Yeah, and I think
And
he's taking the picture
he
because
he he is just completely angry at Lawrence.
yeah, but I don't think it's implied that like he's going to write a hit piece on Lawrence about how he's a murderer or something. Um,
Uh,
do you think that's implied? I see.
I think that's implied because otherwise, um, that's my feeling of it.
Hmm. Because I kind of feel like it's implied that even after the events in the film, people don't really care about that much. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. So
well,
so basically, yeah. Sorry, go on.
I'll say one thing to point out as well. I love how when he got the robe, he did whole vanity. He did a whole vanity twirl around and looked himself in the mirror using a knife. And on the same scene in the massacre, he looked himself using a knife with the horrified expression.
Yes, yes, it's a very good callback. He sees the way in which his image and himself has changed a lot.
So basically, Lawrence of Arabia is Code Geass if Code Geass was realistic, I guess.
Oh gosh, don't even make that. No.
I mean, think about it. If Lelouch didn't have his superpower to literally just order anyone to do anything, this is as far as he would get, right? um, and because
Well, Lelouch also wouldn't have started the rebellion so soon if he didn't have that power.
yeah, he's so smart, isn't he? Um,
He literally mentions that. That's literally a line. We're not talking about that show.
yeah, it's not good enough to be compared to Lawrence of Arabia, I guess. Mm, I see. I see. So I guess, do you feel like, I guess, in terms of character development, the only two characters that seem to get a lot, or any really, Lawrence and Sharif or Ali Sharif or Sharif Ali or something, right?
Yes.
Mm,
Yes. And Sheriff Ali, it's sort of a straightforward matter of he he grows to become Lawrence's friend. Like at uh at Lawrence's initial proposal of marching to Aqaba across the desert, and he says like, no one's made this crossing. This is absolutely nuts. But he admits these are desperate times, and they bring it around, and it's noteworthy that it's only after Lawrence doubles back and brings back the man that was stranded in the desert. Uh, the Sheriff Ali is so impressed by Lawrence, as I think everyone else around him is. that Lawrence has risked so much for them that they effectively accept him as one of their own, and that's why they literally they burn his some of his British officers' clothes and present him with those traditional Arab clothes. I forget the exact name of them or exactly what they are, but they're quite striking and stunning looking. And Lawrence does this little narcissistic twirl where he's like constantly looking at himself in the dagger, and on the one hand, it's trying to showcase how Lawrence is narcissistic and is becoming a little stuck in becoming a little obsessed with his own image, but at the same time, like those clothes are stunning, are pretty neat looking. You would be doing the same in his shoes,
Yeah.
probably.
So,
Another thing to note is the whole scene is basically Peter O'Toole's idea.
Was it? Was it?
Yeah.
so
Ah.
you found that out from that interview you posted, right? I think. Well,
Yes.
another historical inaccuracy, by the way, is that Lawrence in real life was a short guy, apparently.
Oh. Hmm.
Yeah, but they do kind of look the same.
I didn't really notice Lawrence's height one way or another in this movie.
Yeah, I think I didn't notice it either until it was pointed to me out. Let's see. So I guess you would both agree that the film deserves the praise that it gets.
Yes.
But no, you would
I
disagree.
I guess I would say it deserves more praise if I'm gonna be honest.
I mean, how much of it is because the visuals are good? I guess.
Okay, but you say that a film is about visuals. This is not literature we are speaking of. This is film. And visuals are an integral part of a film of any visual medium.
Yeah, of
Stunning
course. I mean, of
visuals.
course. Yeah, I mean, stunning visuals matter, but I guess it's. I mean, it could be. You could have a film which doesn't have stunning visuals, but it's still a great film. Um,
Yes.
so,
Well,
so that doesn't mean that visuals are
eh,
everything. Okay.
I'd actually disagree with that. I'd say if you
I
have
mean, for example, people like that film called 12 Angry Men or something, which is just about a bunch of guys in a room talking, literally.
yeah, but the thing is, even a film like that a film like that is at least going to have like pretty standard visuals. Maybe they'll have good shot placement or something like that. But at the very least, you'll be able to see the other characters, understand, and see clearly. A film
Yeah, of
that
course, I would agree. Of course,
fails.
you need to have like the basics. Like
Yes, a film that.
the camera is shaking all the time, and the sound is shit. You can't hear what they're saying, and I don't know.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
film like that is going to be good, no matter who the scriptwriter is.
yeah. But I mean, that's not what I'm talking about. I guess.
I guess.
Um. I mean, I guess you kind of get the same criticism when it comes to films like Waterloo and Zulu. Um, I mean, how much of it is because like the set pieces and designs look cool?
I find it so interesting that that film Waterloo, which same time period, feels like a similar movie. It was passed over by critics, and people didn't particularly care for it. And of course, I think it's an absolutely brilliant movie, and only seems to have found a lot of acclaim more recently. George, have you seen that movie?
I have not.
Okay, yeah, it's Yeah, it was like this big Italian Soviet production, and they got the whole Soviet army to play as the English and French armies. It is absolutely tremendous. Some of the best. It's another epic film like this where it's all practical. And on top of that, it's really well told as this battle between generals and also Napoleon's fall, rise,
I
and
mean,
fall again.
I get.
And some of the myth of Napoleon, it really gets that across really well. I've probably you might have seen me spamming the scene in the Discord of Napoleon returning in front of the troops that are sent to arrest him, and none of them fire when they're told to.
So I guess if we are judging the film solely by how much of a big spectacle it is, I would say that Lawrence of Arabia is less spectacular than Waterloo, I guess. Hmm, because I don't know. I mean, the only large battle is the one at Aqaba, and it's not. Yeah, I mean it's all right, but
No, well, Lawrence of Arabia is known for its wide vistas, for its stunning views of the desert itself. This very naturalistic feel to the movie. And really, the film is almost. It, the film is almost asking you to fall in love with the desert in the same way Lawrence does.
so it's a tourist
Yeah.
ad.
I guess you could say so, yeah.
I guess
Hmm.
another film that sort of tries to capture it would probably be the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yes, yes. The Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings films do also go for that style. And yeah, there were for a while after those movies were made, New Zealand did become like this little tourist thing to go to because of all the natural beauty that was shown off in those films.
So I guess the film is kind of exploiting the beauty of the desert, or maybe that's not the right way to put it. Maybe
Exploiting is the wrong word
um,
entirely.
I guess
Showing,
showing or maybe
playing,
drawing it out. I don't know. Um,
just
big displaying or drawing it out. I would prefer because I don't know. Um, yeah, it's kind of weird because I'm usually moved more by seeing a place in a film rather than actually being there. I don't know if you have experienced that as well, like going to some kind of historical place like the Colosseum or something. Yeah. Anyway, let's see. I mean, so I guess if you were to remove the beautiful visuals, how much would you, I guess, take off your score?
I
Hmm.
mean, that's at that point we're talking about. See, here's the issue.
You don't think
You're,
you don't think you can separate the visuals from the rest of the story? Is that it?
no, you can't. Because this is a movie that, like I said, it is about getting lost in the desert and all that. I mean, when you talk about what if the film had lesser visuals, I have to even have a picture of what that would look like. Like, would it just be like more standardly shot, still desert shots, but just the directing was more subpar? Would it be like if the film was like done on an obvious Hollywood set from the 60s and everything looked cheap? Because yeah, if it did look like a cheap Hollywood set, the film wouldn't be believable and the film wouldn't work.
So, George, would you describe this film as subtle?
Uh, I wouldn't call it subtle at all. I would call it grand and epic.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I like if you remember in the Discord server, one of the first impressions that I had is that the acting felt a bit theatrical. Like, I don't know, like there was one character which literally said, to Lawrence, like there was one Arab character who literally said, like, asked Lawrence, like, are you one of those white people who love the desert? We Arabs don't love the desert. There's nothing in the
There,
desert. That's not exactly subtle, is it?
yes, there's nothing in the desert. No man needs nothing.
Yeah, it's not exactly subtle. So I kind of got that feeling. So I was kind of because like so when I look at the reviews, like I found a bunch of, I guess, the ones which tried to be more analytic, quote unquote, were like trying to psychoanalyze Lawrence or something.
Yes.
And I don't know. I mean, I guess I think one of the challenges that many of the reviewers had when reviewing it is that because the movie is not subtle, basically
It,
there's nothing when you come to review it. You like that's not much to add. If you get
yeah,
what I mean.
there is. I'd agree with that somewhat. There's not tons extra to say that the film doesn't somewhat get across. I wouldn't say there's nothing. There's little bits that some people might miss. Like, for example, the man at the very end of the film who is complaining about the how outrageous everything is, how outrageous the conditions are in this like little hospital, and he gets very angry at Lawrence, like slaps him. Uh, this that, and he also previously got an autograph for him. That's the exact same man who, at the start of the movie, uh, at the funeral, is telling everyone that, "Oh, I know. Oh, Lawrence was a great man. How dare you besmirch his character like that?" And everyone goes, "Well, did you know him?" He said, "Well, I got his autograph once."
I kind of get I kind of get the feeling that he's not lying there. That he really thinks that, but it's just that because basically people believe the media more than they believe what they see with their own eyes.
Yes.
um,
Admittedly, Lawrence had extenuating circumstance there, but yeah, it does show that this man, in general, whether his appraisal was correct or not, he's the type of man who's probably far too quick to judge, and not capable of making that proper judgment.
so I guess the movie is basically pro Lawrence essentially. Um,
I mean, I
I mean,
don't see
I guess that
where
yeah. Sorry, go on.
if you make a 4-hour biopic about a character, uh, I don't see how you can come away with it not at least somewhat sympathetic to the character. I mean, to be fair, there are films like, let's say, Reds, which was about the American journalist that chronicled the Russian Revolution and was a socialist himself. I'm blanking on his name. Oh, I'll get it up in a second here. But but that movie does not portray that character in a very good light, even though Warren Beatty, no, John Reed, Jack Reed. But yeah, the film Reds, which is very much in the same style of epic films, but was made in '81. Uh, that's a film, I guess you could say, that does contrast this, where it shows Jack Reed and his tribulations and whatnot, and it shows him as very much being him and his wife as being these contemptible, silly characters. Whereas with Lawrence, it is very sympathetic throughout. You see how great he was, and then how he falls into nothing, and then how he just becomes this restless nobody. I believe Prince Faisal even tells him at the end of the movie, as he's going to England, more or less that that the desert is your home now, and really there is no home for Lawrence once he returns to England, which is why he is like pulls these stunts as a motorcycle pilot that eventually kills him.
Mm. It's implied that he kind of, it wasn't like he wasn't driving properly, I guess. He was
Yeah,
kind of fast.
There's even a scene where there's like him and another soldier on a motorcycle, and the soldier goes, "Well, sir, going home," and Lawrence just has this very depressed expression on his face and says nothing.
It almost the. I mean, at first when I watched it, I was kind of wondering, like, did he kill himself? But I believe not. I think that's not the
No.
case now.
Yeah, no.
So yeah, go on.
Yeah, there are better ways of killing yourself than an elaborate motorcycle accident.
Yeah, because you do kind of see it in movies and films, especially crime dramas, whatever. That after a character feels guilty about something, he will just speed, go as fast as possible, and then be unable to take a corner in a car and then die like that or something.
Mm.
Or at least that's what I've seen. Yeah, forgot what I was going to say. So yeah, another point. So what about the portrayal of the British? I kind of felt, did it feel a bit simplistic? I kind of feel like it was a bit simplistic, comedic. I mean, excluding Lawrence himself. Yes.
I would disagree with that. I think the British in the movie are. I feel I struggle to almost define it because I feel like they portray the British so well and so realistically. But they portray them as very professional. They have this classic, I don't know, just old-timey British personality in terms. I'm struggling to almost define it, but it's.
I mean, is it a trope or is it real, though? I mean,
it was real. It was real. This, like Sir David Lean, like I'm pretty damn sure he served in World War II along these people. The whole stiff upper lip thing, that was a real thing, and you see that a lot in this movie. You have there's this certain commanding presence all the British officers have, and this certain regality and gloriousness in the way they portray the British military throughout the movie. That there really is something grand and that even when it does show the British as like they are essentially using the Arabs, it always portrays the British in their own capacity as somewhat grand and heroic and bombastic.
I mean, I guess even the movie kind of makes fun of Lawrence when he tries to sound too British or whatever. When he comes back and tries to kind of laugh as a normal person, as a normal British person, he speaks to his commanders or something. like.
Well, it's more they find he's it's more the opposite, where they think he's LARPing as an Arab, and they find it completely like they understand that he would be wearing those
No,
robes.
but I mean after he puts on the British uniform again, um, and
Oh
he,
yeah,
uh,
oh yeah, yeah. That's actually another interesting point that I forgot to go over is after the scene in which he is sodomized. Lawrence returns to headquarters, and it's the first time since he left headquarters the first time that he's actually in a British officer's uniform. The whole rest of the time, he was wearing that Arab uniform because he self-identified himself with them. Uh, but then he shows up in that British uniform. He's almost regressed back to himself at the start of the movie, and he has the foppish character again, and he very much does see himself as I'm nobody, I'm just nobody again, and he's taken on the British officer's uniform because he's trying to turn himself back into nobody, but he really can't at this point.
another difference between reality and the film is that, and this was one of the, I think, in the history buffs video, I think this was the biggest change, which he criticized. History buffs, the channel criticized, was that
Yeah,
um, Lawrence actually knew about the Sykes-Picot agreement,
agreement. Yes,
and I don't know. I mean, that whole conversation and discussion were like, he wasn't aware, but then I think um, one of the guys there says, one of the British guys, I guess, says that, well, we lied knowingly, but you must have known.
you lied under suspicion.
So that makes you worse or
Yeah,
something. What was that?
no,
It
it makes you
necessary?
just as bad. Well, that's them trying to keep to the history somewhat, because obviously in reality Lawrence did know about Sykes-Picot, which makes his which made his whole leading of the Arab Revolt something of a two-timer deal, which makes him somewhat unsympathetic. In order to make him more sympathetic and to make it more dramatic in the movie, he doesn't actually know about it.
Mm.
And they actually tell him and he actually tries to get guarantees from the British and the French that they have no interest in Arabia. And the general goes like, "Well, at this time, I believe we have no interest." And it's like, and
Mm.
later on, he's saying like, "Well, you had some suspicion that Britain would do something like this," and it's like, "Yeah, he did." But at the same time, he attempted to obtain guarantees that Britain was not doing this. And oh look, they did it anyways. So
I don't know. I kind of I agree with that history buffs guy that it would have been better if they had left it that way, because obviously there was no way that he was that dumb. And I also found it a bit. Um, I didn't like how there was basically there was this guy who just explained what the Sykes-Picot agreement was in detail, like nobody knows what it is.
that's the French ambassador there. Yes, French
Yeah.
delegate of some capacity.
Like, let me read this from Wikipedia. That's how it felt to me a bit. Um,
I mean, I think it works quite well.
I
Like
don't
I
know.
said,
I kind of feel like if he had it would have made him a more complex character if like he had knowingly like in real life and knowingly tried to help the Arabs despite
they
knowing.
could have done that if the film was trying to tell a story of Lawrence's dual loyalties between the British and the Arabs.
But they went.
But they weren't, because it's pretty clear where Lawrence's loyalties are in the film.
Yeah, with the Arabs, totally.
To the Arabs and to himself and his myth, not to the British.
No, not to the British and other things, only to other things, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, I see. So that's what they were going for. Okay. What else is there to talk about?
George, is there anything else you'd like to say about the movie?
I suppose, in case you don't get it by now, watch the movie whenever you can. It's up on YouTube. There's no excuse.
Yeah, there's like a few scenes cut here and there, but yeah, or just fucking like.
Torrent it. Oh, buy.
Well,
Buy.
no,
Okay.
but it's very easy to buy. You can get like a very. This is the type of film. Don't taunt this. Don't watch this on some computer screen. Blow this up on like the biggest TV you got. Turn off the lights, and
It's all
turn
about the
it on.
visuals.
Yes.
Yeah, the visuals are very, very nice. This is like.
This is like going there.
This was like why movie theater. This is one of those things of like why movie theaters exist. It's one of those classic movies that gets like shown in theaters every so often.
But don't expect that by giving money to whoever owns the rights to this film that you're ever going to get anything as good as this.
No, of course not.
Only those. Much worse. I guess. What about Islam? So this film came out before there was a large Muslim population in the West. So,
yes.
So I guess people make this point about the film Rambo a lot because, like, in that film, I think.
Yes, they're blatantly backing the Mujahideen, who, the same people that they would end up fighting later. You actually don't see Rambo 3 on TV anymore because of that, almost. But
so it's not as bad here, I guess.
No, because this is a much more decentralized thing, and it's towards like Arab nationalism and whatnot, which is something of a more secular movement. You can very much see, and it comes across, the perspective on Islam that predominated in this period, and was essentially a perspective of where Islam was seen because the Islam was essentially very weak at this point. Islam was seen as this funny variation of Christianity almost, with interesting sayings and interesting wisdom, and this own warrior culture to it. And of course, the warrior nomad is a naturally noble archetype. So there was naturally a certain amount of Western idealism towards it and towards Islam.
Yeah, I guess basically Lawrence was trying to, play out those fantasies about knights and crusaders, except given that there weren't any knights and crusaders on the Christian side of the world, he had to go to the other side. And I guess it's easier to show these warrior nomads. Look at the positive side, I guess. If you are not.
The other thing to remember is Islam itself has gone through a real revival in the past 100 years. It was a lot more generally, you might say, feminized towards the end of the Ottoman Empire. Even in like the 50s and the 60s, things were relatively secular in most of the Arab world. Famously in Iran, up until the Islamic Revolution, you had women in short skirts, and they looked like they just any European country. But there's been a real revival, I think, almost as a reaction to like the forces of modernity and whatnot, and that's led to a real lurch in the other direction towards Islam in the greater Middle East, to the point that you have like, which is how you get to like some wild people that talk about like no television at all, no images at all, no music at all. Of course, those people are like the minority of a minority, but
Yeah,
but those people still get publicized and talked about as these little curiosities.
yeah,
And like 100 years ago, that was not a thing. There weren't people or groups of people going around living like that. I guess you could say partially because they weren't interacting with that technology, but there also wasn't any feeling that you need to go around that. I mean, to be fair, they did view somewhat superstitiously across images, and that you actually see that in this film, where one of
yeah, but
the
it's
one,
played for comedic effect. I know what you're saying. You're saying that guy who
yeah,
doesn't want pictures taken of himself because the
yes,
picture will steal
will
his
steal his
honor.
soul,
Um,
yeah, his honor, his soul, something like that.
I mean, I guess in a sense it is kind of true
Yeah,
in the sense that in the modern day it's harder to lionize political leaders and whatnot because you can see the footage like
you,
the
you,
rather than artistic interpretations of it or just hearing
you,
tales about it.
you could actually say that the film backs up that character's interpretation, because it's Lawrence who gets these pictures taken so often, and he does kind of lose his soul.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as for the Islamic thing, I think basically it was the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. I feel like if there was a centralized
Yeah,
authority like the Caliph, then things wouldn't have gotten so hot.
that's true. Yeah, the collapse of any centralized authority did. You could say it was almost like a Protestant Reformation for Islam, where they
Okay.
just
Yes.
splintered in all sorts of directions.
I wonder whether, given enough time, it will end up the same as the Protestants, who, I
Uh,
mean, it could be a bit because it was a revival in some sense in extremism,
mhm,
but it didn't last. I mean, it did last, but it petered out, uh, getting divided into, I guess, national churches and whatnot, which then naturally petered out.
mhm,
Um, let's see. I guess the reason why I thought about this is also because there's a BBC documentary called the Legacy of T. Lawrence, which it was made during the occupation of Iraq,
mhm.
and yeah, I mean, I tried watching it. I got yeah, some of it is annoying because obviously it's left wing. So
Mm.
like when he was talking about the Crusaders in the documentary, was talking
Oh yeah, of
um,
course.
like um,
Oh, those. It's not like war was filled with sackings of cities in those days.
no. What he said, which annoyed me, was that right now, just like Lawrence and the Crusaders, the Americans will find out how hard it is to rule over
Oh
uh,
wow, wow,
other people's
that's
land,
Uh,
implying that the
oh wow.
Crusaders were not
to
trying
make
to.
it more and to make it more insulting, that is basically publicly
Yes,
funded.
implying that the Crusaders were not trying to retake their own land. Uh,
Yes, Al Qaeda slay.
um, And I mean,
Well. To be fair, the Crusaders were like contracted by Byzantium, and then just sort of started taking over. Like,
yes, they
it,
destroyed Byzantium. Yes, it's the reason why the Muslims were probably able to take over it. Um, so they're not exactly the good guys always, but you get the point. Um, and I guess what he was trying to say, I didn't watch the whole thing, but what he was saying, I mean, or what he was beginning to say, because like with with a lot of these um, condescending documentaries, like
yeah,
they take fucking forever to tell you anything, because like this,
anything. Yeah.
like
Oh,
they treat you like you're an idiot, basically.
oh.
Oh
Never
Um,
mind,
yeah,
because you're
and it's
going to
like
hate.
this new detail about our findings after the next commercial.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Let's, let's say you're going to absolutely hate Michael Moore because he does the exact same thing.
oof.
I don't know.
Yeah, they seem they seem addicted to that, and I just consider it to be yeah, very irritating. It makes it come across like a used car salesman.
Yeah, I normally prefer it when it's just one guy just talking to me, like rather than
Yes.
these random bits of like random bits from interviews trying to hype up like with random bits of interviews with authority figures about the subject, like
Oh
trying to
yeah.
hype you up, like Lawrence of Arabia was like this really cool guy or something. Just get on with it. um
Walking with Dinosaurs is still the best documentary ever made. Psst.
what the hell is that? I've never heard of it.
Oh, it's an old nature documentary. I'm being half facetious.
I see. Anyway, I think that the point which he was trying to make is that like now that basically like the reason for why Lawrence failed are somehow reflected in why the Americans in Iraq failed to create the holy democracy or something. And I think he was trying to make the point because like I think that they were both in Iraq at some point. Um, yeah, sorry, I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
I mean, just that I don't know. It sounds like it sounds like whatever this documentary is making like very surface level comparisons that aren't interesting or particularly accurate
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like,
beyond surface
I don't
level.
know, what do they want? Do they want like the American soldiers to go and live with, to abandon their bases and go and live with, I don't know, nomadic Arab tribes like Lawrence did, and that somehow is going to
No,
make
look,
their
they want they want Arab tribes to become just like good Europeans, but they want it to happen naturally with no force, or at least the force should be completely out of their shouldn't be visible. They shouldn't have to see it happening.
Hmm. I guess if there is any contrast with Iraq, between Iraq and what happened with Lawrence, I guess it's I guess in terms of tribal divisions, it's more. I think it more than a tribal division. I guess. I mean, I guess there is in terms of the Kurds, but I think the biggest division there is more um, religious. Between the Shias and the Sunnis, which you could say is still kind of tribal. I don't know.
Well,
Um,
Lawrence here also isn't trying to impose a certain form of government on the Arabs. And Sheriff Ali even talks about like it's a thing at the time to have parliaments and kings and whatnot. And, but they're very non-committal. From their perspective, the important thing is to have a government for the Arabs. What form it takes is sort of like, well, we'll see what fits our needs. Like the newspaper reporter at one point asked him, like, "You people gonna have a parliament?" And he says, like, "I'll tell you that when I have a country." And the newspaper reporter jogs him, and he goes like, "You'll make a real good politician.
I mean, I guess.
You say
Yeah.
nothing when you're asked. Well, when you answer a question, you say nothing one way or another. Perfect.
Yeah, I guess when it comes to so that was I think that character was again Ali Sheriff or Sheriff Ali.
Yes.
And I think the point about him becoming a politician is kind of made at the end as well, isn't it? Isn't it like when when the other Arab leader from the other tribe, I can't remember any of the names, tells him, "Oh, you haven't become a politician yet." When
Mhm,
when Ali pushes him aside for being
mhm.
a member of another tribe or something.
Yeah, Adu Abi Tai.
Yeah, very easy name.
Yeah, yeah. Bedouin. The
And
leader of the leader of the Hawittats.
I guess I mean yeah. Do you kind of get the feeling that well, okay, like okay, we got the Sykes-Picot agreement and all that, but at the end of the day, the Arabs got what they wanted, more or less. Or do you think no? Um,
Well,
uh, yeah,
it is true that the Arabs kicked out the Ottomans, which was something that they desired. I don't particularly know what Ottoman rule over the Arabs was like towards the end, but my basic impression is that the Young Turks were pushing things in a direction that was upsetting the Arabs and whatnot.
yes. Essentially, what was happening was there was beginning to form a Turkish nationalism, which wasn't really there before.
Yeah.
Um, so obviously, you if you have so that's different from what was there earlier, which was just basically an empire where the different tribes, religious groups would all be loyal to or pledge their loyalty for in exchange for
Sultan.
protection um,
Yes.
to the
Yeah.
sultan.
The classical model of like loyalty to your sovereign and then loyalty to your regional group. That's classically how it worked.
Yes, essentially the Turkish nationalists saw this as a problem because they wanted to develop Turkey into a modern, powerful state, and yeah. Anyway, that's got nothing to do with the film, I guess.
Mm,
So
tangential.
I did he marry? By the way, did Lawrence marry? Because there aren't
No.
that many.
I
No, he
don't
didn't.
think so. No, I believe he was a bachelor all through his life.
Yeah, so there are speculations that either he is a homosexual or asexual by some people.
Yeah, they are retarded.
Yeah, yeah. The classic. You always see that in any man like that.
Yeah, I don't
Was
know.
born out of wedlock. I mean, I don't know enough to comment on the real person, but if we were only talking about the Lawrence that is portrayed in the movie, the Lawrence that is portrayed in the movie would probably be very bored by a wife and probably have unless he found someone who was like really understood him in an intimate manner, would probably find them very much a bother.
I mean, do you feel like Lawrence is kind of like an overgrown boy or something? Or do you, or
It's,
maybe no?
yeah, you could make that
Yeah,
comparison. Yeah,
I mean, the military officers basically called him an overgrown boy, called him a fool.
Yeah, an overgrown middle class boy or something. so whose real life experience is basically being an academic or an archaeologist. So anyway, but I guess the reason why that came to mind is not because I think he's gay or something. I don't know, like if that's I don't know, like just because a man doesn't settle with a woman, that doesn't mean he's gay.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I think so. But more, I guess the reason why it came to mind is because there are there any because there aren't any women here because sometimes
No.
in films like for example Zulu, like for some reason they have the token woman there.
Well, in Zulu, they have they're like Calvinist or some Protestant branch preachers,
Yeah,
and
but
they
let's
and
face it, the women is they are just to look pretty, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that's how
mm,
it is.
mm.
The,
Well, I think
yeah, you think
yeah,
that's another point. Anyway, there's no such thing here, at least.
no, no. I yeah, if there are. Yeah, there basically are no female characters in this in the slightest.
Mm,
Yeah, which is another reason you couldn't make a film like this today.
yeah, I think
People would,
it's probably a reason to give it like one more point when it comes to scores.
which I find it funny. Like you have anime with like nothing but female characters,
Yeah.
but you can't have the inverse here.
mm,
Well, funny that you mentioned it. There are quite a few modern films that don't have female characters. I would say the only film I can think of is probably Dunkirk, or at least I never seen
Yeah,
any female
that's
characters.
true. That's true. But they had to include, of course, the random like Sikh Indian who has no reason for being there.
oh
Oh
god.
no,
Or the Black
no,
Man.
that was the World War One movie. World War Two
Yeah,
movie
1917.
was yeah, that was 1917. The World War Two movie was base black man in the subway supporting Winston.
Oh god.
Or in the beginning of the scene where it's just one black man in the middle of the crowd.
Yeah.
To be fair, maybe Vincent deserved that. Who knows? I don't know. Like from what I hear about Winston, in some of these circles, he seems to be a bit hated. I don't know.
Yeah, I view him. I basically view him as a someone who played out the role of a fool. Even if I'm somewhat sympathetic to his character.
Yeah, I think. By the way, even after the war, I think even during the Second World War, if I'm not mistaken, Winston used Lawrence. By the way, um, as part of the I don't know to promote the war essentially. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
you could say that I guess that makes Lawrence a fool's fool, or maybe not.
Eh,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, must yeah, he must have been pretty old by that point, Lawrence. Though. Uh,
yeah, well, Lawrence only died at 46. I don't think he even lived to. Did he? Yeah, no.
Yeah,
Lawrence
well,
died in 1935. He did not live to World War II.
I see. So I
yeah,
guess I
no.
must have seen. It must have been in the First World War. Still, I don't know.
Yeah, he
Go.
was probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the thing in the first scene actually did happen. That's how he died.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I believe. Yeah. That. Yeah. He was going to meet some people, and I think that's the people. And but he didn't see them, and that's he had to turn to the side at the last moment, and that's how he died apparently.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess another memorable scene which came to mind is like at the end when Faisal is negotiating for a fucking water pump or something.
Yes. and yeah, Lawrence is just so taken aback, and the audience is. But King Faisal's like, "This is our lot in life. This is the matter of adults, and ultimately, it is the matter of young men to fight and old men to make the peace. And peace is what's." He has some great quote that's a lot more pithy than how I'm reproducing it.
Yeah, I know. That's what I meant when I said that I felt the dialogue was a bit theatrical. If you get what I mean. But
Oh, it is, but it's fantastic.
yeah, it is good for what it is. Not
I
exactly
mean,
the opposite of subtle, I guess. I mean, like I kind of overstating the point almost, or maybe being too polite, that sort of thing. Sorry, George, I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
well, I was gonna say, to be fair, movies during that time have sort of that style of dialogue where it's just larger than life characters, or not larger than life characters, but they perform theatrical.
Mm.
I mean, from I don't know that much about cinema, but from what I've heard, it's that at least in the 50s, it was all about having some kind of actor always play the same role, and you're like, but in different stories, but it's almost the same character essentially.
Oh yeah,
Um,
here's the quote I
Yeah.
was thinking of. Quote, "There's nothing further here for a warrior. We drive bargains, old men's work. Young men make wars, and the virtues of wars are the virtues of young men. Courage and hope for the future. Then old men make the peace, and the vices of peace are vices of old men. Distrust and caution. It must be so."
mm,
Very theatrical. There's also another line which we sort of didn't talk about, where like just at the start of the second half after the intermission, where King Faisal or Prince Faisal is interviewing the being interviewed by the American journalist. He says, quote, "With Major Lawrence, mercy is a passion. With me, it is merely good manners. You may judge whose motive is the more reliable." Of course, we see ultimately whose it is more reliable.
yeah. So, I mean, yeah. There's many. I think the most memorable quote is, but I can't remember it, so maybe it's not that memorable. But when at the start, um,
You are a
Lawrence.
silly people.
Hmm?
You are a silly people.
No, not that one, but at least the one which stuck to my mind was when um, he he was all holding that match until it went out or something, or rather,
Oh yes,
and
Oh yeah.
the trick, Mister Potter or whatever, is not minding that it hurts.
yeah, I like that one. And I think it was right exactly at that point when I said that I found it a bit theatrical, but it's all good. So
Yeah.
Roger Ebert gives it a 4 out of 5.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, yeah. So I haven't read the reviews, so I don't know why it is that he wouldn't give it a 5 out of 5. Um,
I know every review is a little different.
but I guess what about you guys? What would you give it? Let's start with you, George.
A 10.
10 out of 10.
Yes.
I see. As good as Legend of the Galactic Heroes, I guess.
Well,
Yes.
Good.
Legend of Galactic Heroes is not flawless.
Yeah.
I'd give this a 9. If maybe I deserve to rate it higher, but at the same time, I can acknowledge that I don't know. In some places it drags a little, and the other thing is, I watched this with a friend, and the friend did note that the first half of the movie is an absolutely tour de force. It absolutely grips you with Lawrence's story. The second half of the movie, in some ways, is a tragedy, but it almost feels like an anticlimax. And while that is what literally happened, and so you kind of have to tell that story, you catch yourself almost wishing that they could have fictionalized the story and have Lawrence's rebellion succeeded, and that would have been the better story to tell. But ultimately, ultimately, the story is as it is.
So I guess it's like is it like you don't like the message essentially that you would have rather liked Lawrence's ideals to prove to be true? I guess in this case.
I guess so. Yeah. Yeah.
I would also agree that basically after the battle at Akaba, nothing much really happens.
It slows down. Yes, a lot.
Because you kind of get the feeling that like it's going to go higher and higher. I don't know, like a Garen Lagan or something.
And
uh,
it doesn't. Yeah, yeah, it doesn't.
it does give that vibe, doesn't it? And but that's not what happens. So which I guess makes it more complex. Because you could argue that something like Garen Lagan is just keeping on making the same point over and over again. Except yeah, we are just going to every time we are just going to double down on the same point.
Mhm.
Except maybe at the end or something. I think that's the consensus we came to at the last time when you talked about it. Um, yeah. So I don't know. Hmm. I don't know. Roger Ebert describes Lawrence in this film as a sexually and socially unconventional man. I guess
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe this is just something which I saw, but from the beginning, I kind of saw that Lawrence that for some maybe this is just I just imagined it, but I think I saw that Lawrence's eyes were kind of darkened, like a woman's for some reason, like a woman with makeup. Maybe I know I'm the only one who noticed it.
No, Lawrence's eyes tended to be like this very bright, striking blue that stands out throughout the movie.
Yes, I mean around his eyes, the area around his eyes, but never mind that.
Hmm.
Um. Okay. So what about the violence? I guess. I mean, did you get like this was like, except maybe for the for some of the shots which you get of the massacre, a little bit. Did you get like the feel like this was like the Boy Scouts view of a battle almost? Um,
Well,
oh,
you're thinking that because you're not used to, I guess, say, films from the 60s. I mean, this is like old film where you weren't allowed to show much, and it wasn't expected to show too much. And I
Yeah.
think and I think the film does it quite well. I mean, there's not many scenes that need a tremendous amount of blood and gore. And when they do have to show some blood for the massacre, they show it. And they don't try and like zoom in on any like guts or anything. They just show a lot of blood and Lawrence being blood soaked himself, and I think it's all quite effective.
yes, yes. I mean, in some ways, I felt like not showing it and making you imagine it made it a bit feel brutal. For example,
Yes.
during the massacre, or rather, I guess, or rather, the reaction to the massacre, I guess,
Oh yeah.
by which I mean when when Lawrence and the Arabs massacre the massacre, whatever, you get the point.
Yeah.
The Ottomans massacred the villagers. You only get to see Lawrence slashing at people. And I guess in some scenes, like the ones at Aqaba, like uh, you can kind of see that you can kind you don't you kind of get the feel like the blade isn't cutting through anyone. The people are just acting sometimes.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, that I guess the most brutal thing which they do show is when they show that shot for a brief while of the villagers being massacred and the women probably raped and lying dead as well.
Yeah.
That was probably the most brutal shot. So you said this came out in 1960, right? Um,
Yeah. The 60s. Yes.
let's see.
'62.
So was this a British production or an American one?
Columbia Pictures, so an American production ultimately. But David Lean himself is British. Oh no, through his British company Horizon Pictures. Oh no, it was British made, distributed by Columbia. Yeah, British made.
Let's see. So I guess British made. I Yeah, because I was kind of it. I wasn't able to say. Um, I don't know. You kind of get a different feel when the Americans make it for some reason. But
Yes.
but it did sort of feel a little bit American as well. Not too much. For example, the way that the American character was portrayed, that didn't the journalist, they didn't seem particularly American to me. Uh,
No, he seemed very American to me.
no,
Like
no,
that's
I mean the way in which the Americans would have portrayed him.
oh, probably not. No, he's portrayed as an outsider. This is like the rest of Europe. The way they see Americans as sort of like these like slim customers, the sort of like not all there when it comes to morals, not completely honest. Sort of like some of the same noirish tropes.
So, unless there's anything else to say, I was thinking of going on IMDb and looking at some negative reviews.
Uh,
Go for it.
uh,
do
yeah,
we have to?
why not? Why not? So, because I don't know, I kind of feel like it's incomplete when it's just people praising something, and it's also fun. I feel like just getting angry. So
It's
what?
not incomplete when the people are stupid.
Well, maybe. So with its epic sweep and stunning visuals, okay, blah blah blah. So this is a 7 out of 10 still. So it's not
Okay.
that low.
Yeah.
So he did. There wasn't a lot he could warm up to in this movie. More than
Yeah.
once, I wound up saying to myself, "I get it already." After repeated close-ups of the baking desert sun and limitless expanse of sand, so you don't feel like it. I didn't feel like it was overdone or something. It, I don't know. I didn't feel like it was that long. I guess maybe. Mm, did you
It
feel?
is literally 4 hours. You of course have the intermission in between, which is really nice. I usually find watch one half, then come back to it.
I see.
Uh,
Mm,
the it is a film that can feel like long, unsurprisingly. It doesn't feel fastly paced. It's every scene is allowed time to breathe and everything's more naturalistic, which was the style in the times. And I think it works well overall, but I can see someone being annoyed by the longer pace.
So it's going to say that he wasn't inspired to empathize with Lawrence's cause to unite the Bedouin tribes. But I don't know, like, what was it meant to? Because the impression which I got was that did you feel like, I mean, it was like that, it was more I don't know. Let's see what he has to say. One might contend that the story is far enough removed from modern history, both chronologically and geographically, to be of interest. But I would point to two films of the 1930s that look at a similar track and worked for me a lot better. 1935's The Lives of a Bengal Lancer and 1939's Gunga Din, both taking place on the Indian subcontinent. Have you heard of either film? No.
I'm not familiar with either
No,
of those. No.
neither have I.
So okay. No, I think the rest is it just praising for the rest, praising it.
Here's something that's more negative. Look at all the 1-star reviews.
I don't know. Is there some way to sort the 1-star reviews on IMDb or somewhere else?
Yeah, there is.
Okay, so there's a 6 out of 10 one. It says British colonel and shameless exhibitionist T. Lawrence. I think that's a quote, right?
Typical.
T. Lawrence, stationed in Cairo during the First World War, is sent. This is just retelling the plot. Yeah, but why are you giving it a 6 out of 10? So,
He's a colonialist, blah blah.
So he's saying that it's hardly a study of T. Lawrence and more of a commercially viable action picture. Did you get that feeling that this is just an action movie?
What? No.
Yeah.
No.
So visually, it's always exciting, but we don't sense the boiling hot sun or the winds whispering over the dunes.
What? What? You didn't? Did you not watch the same film?
So for a director like Lean,
How many long shots of the desert do you need? Do you want 2 hours of nothing but long shots of the desert? Because that seems to be what you're asking for.
yeah, I guess if somebody were to make fun of this, they would kind of exaggerate it and say that it was just a bunch of like shots of the desert or something.
Yeah.
Let's see, 4 out of 10. Lawrence of Arabia calling Larry. I don't know. I was terribly disappointed with this utter sand and dust desert film. That it won the Academy Award for Best Picture in 1962 is most shocking. The other 4 nominees had to be far better. As a historian, so it's an historian, okay. I knew or at least an internet historian. I knew they were referring to the World War I conflict. Okay, you all know that. The name of the war is never mentioned throughout the film, so like, what's the problem with that?
I don't get it.
Okay, so the best performance here was given by Anthony Quinn. Who does Anthony Quinn?
Art Faisal.
Faisal. Is it really that good?
No, that's Alec Guinness as Lord Faisal.
Hmm.
Who is he talking about? Anthony Quayle as Colonel Brighton? Is that who he's talking about?
I don't know.
Guess so.
So Peter O'Toole looked half.
Oh no, Anthony Quinn as Ada Abu Tayi. Okay, yeah, so he was the main other Arab leader.
Well,
the Hawitat leader.
I'm glad
he was alright.
Yeah, I'm glad that he gets some praise because most of the sneering by the leftists is usually about that character because they did, most of them I guess didn't realize that the other Arabs were played by white people. So yeah, maybe his makeup wasn't as good.
Maybe.
Peter O'Toole looked half crazed throughout. But
Gee, that's the point.
yeah. And Omar Sharif was ready to study politics for nearly 4 hours of this epic joke of a film. Um, okay, that was kind of funny. Um, that Omar Sharif was ready to study politics for nearly 4 hours, but he didn't really. So, what had really happened to Lawrence when he was tortured by the Turk? We all know
Uh,
what happened.
okay,
Come on.
Yeah.
this guy doesn't understand subtext.
Yes, he wants everything to be shown.
Okay. Arthur Kennedy is the reporter in the film looking for a scoop. He was the reporter 2 years before in the far better film Elmer Gantry. I don't know who was that. An elderly Claude Rains plays a diplomat who really shows little emotion here. He literally speaks his lines like the old days of being under contract and having to do film. Blah blah
Yes.
blah. George, why don't you find me a good 1 out of 10 review? I can't figure out how.
Well, I linked it, so choose whatever you want. Well, it's pretty much I filtered it, so it's all 1 stars.
So what's the top 1 star? Go with that.
Let me see. How do I link this?
Or you can read it as well, right?
Most overrated piece of oh god, they spelled terrible wrong cinematography. Why on earth is this considered one of the best? Can anyone explain this mystery to me? This film is just awful. Outdated, slow, cliched, skewed, biased, unrealistic, propaganda driven, silly at times, overtly naive, and very, very long. Peter O'Toole, can he play? He can. None here. Here, his uneasy array of homo hints, blank stare, evidently weak acting, very unnatural emotional display, shallow delivery in general, very irritating mimics. Omar Sharif and Al Guinness is no better with their laughable gestures, bad lines, and unconvincing acting. This is a very overrated piece of
This
time
has
movie.
to be a troll review. This has
Probably. Belongs where it should be, in the past, as a result of very executed epic saga, which drags and dies along. My advice, watch it, but then drop it. There are better movies in this world. This one is a waste of time.
I see. So, okay, most of it. Okay. The greatest waste of your time. That's the next one. So basically, the reason I wasn't able to find it is because the mobile view of the website is crippled. I was reading it from my mobile phone. So, and there's no way to sort the reviews by the number of stars for some reason. Anyway, the new IMDb website layout sucks anyway, even on desktop. So it's still more than a little frustrating that Lawrence of Arabia is still considered a great motion picture. How long must we all pretend that this overpuffed, overstuffed bag of sand is a good movie? It isn't. It's a terrible, slow-moving, monotonous, sleep-inducing 4-hour waste of time. There's no deep analysis here. Endless desert sequences are supposed to carry a story about war and Arabs and blah blah blah. Sometimes the classics are classics. Citizen Kane is a great film. Casablanca and Gone with the Wind are just as brilliant and blah blah blah. Why don't any of these give us any reason? Let's see. I think let's see. O'Toole is a windbag. One of those detestable snobs who seems to revel in hearing his own voice. Okay. Somebody who just dislikes the actor. By the way, can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay. Okay. All the blah blah blah. Poof. Okay, the film is praised for its cinematography, particularly the desert photography. I'll agree that there are some good shots, but they aren't that great. If I want desert shots, I can see them much better by buying the box set of Life. I don't know. There's something called. You know what
That's a
that?
documentary. That's a nature documentary.
And watching the episode on deserts. In fact, I can find a dozen BBC series, usually in high definition and usually narrated by David Attenborough. So documentaries. So I don't
Hmm.
know. I think this guy's comparing apples and oranges here. If you like desert shots, my advice would be to get the documentaries instead and turn off the sound so you aren't disturbed by Attenborough's droning on and on. But I mean, why would you just watch? Why would you just want to watch some random um, uh, desert footage? You know. Okay. The majority of the film is taken up by Lawrence seemingly crossing deserts in real time. This is both boring and pointless as a filmic experience. An alternative would be to try watching documentaries. So, I mean, did you guys feel like the scenes of them going through the desert, especially before they got into Aqaba, that it was too long?
No.
No, not at all.
I kind of feel like it kind of built tension, like something was going to happen, and something did happen.
Hmm.
Before they got there, Lawrence had to go back and all that. The theme tune, the one you can't get out of your head, even if you try, occurs exactly when and where you think it will, usually signaling another real-time trek across another bloody desert, or back again. At least you can enliven your viewing experience by predicting when the theme tune will come back in. I guarantee you will get it right every time. I don't know, I didn't feel like when it comes to the soundtrack that I would listen to it, that it's something that I would listen to it by myself without watching the film. I mean, what did you guys feel anything about the soundtrack?
The
I
soundtrack is quite nice, and it really accentuates the film overall. The theme of it is the Lawrence of Arabia theme is very iconic.
oh yeah.
I the songs and the intermission are of course spectacular. Like overall, it's just a very well done classical soundtrack.
What did you think, George?
I would say I overall enjoyed it. I enjoyed the I guess you would say the intermission soundtrack the most.
Yeah, I basically skimmed over it because I wanted to get to the next part of the film. But yeah, I guess they were right. Isn't there some music at the start as well with the
Yes.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's like a full 2-3 minutes of just music with a black screen at the start to set the mood, which is more the style of the time. If you're trying to do an epic, yeah, you're right. It is very sort of theatrical.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I wondered if there was some kind of commercial reason, and I was kind of worried that maybe the torrent, which I got, wasn't working. Uh,
No.
so yeah, so I mean, this was probably back when they used to play the British national anthem before every movie, which is a bit odd. So number four. So that was he has numbered them the points. The action scenes all run left to right, or is it right to left? I forget. There's a reason for this, which I also forget, but both on IMDb can explain it to you. Despite the huge number of extras, camels, etc. employed, it generates some really unimpressive battle scenes when you start to notice the left to rightness of the action. Did you feel that for some reason the action was happening in the same direction? I didn't notice it, but
I didn't
thinking
either.
about it, yeah, go on.
Are you complaining about?
Yeah, I
Apparently,
don't understand
It's
that
one of
complaint at
those
all.
things that it's one of those things that even if I notice, it's like What's your point? Why do you care? Why is this not trivia? Why is this affecting your judgment of the movie? This is such a minor trivia point.
Yeah,
Who are these people?
these are the movie critics. I don't know. I don't know. I kind of feel like the movie critics are even weirder than the anime ones. Like
No,
the people on my anime list. Because I don't know. Like,
well, you've got more people.
is that so? Because I kind of feel like the people on my anime list kind of judge the anime like they're judging a book.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the film critics sometimes can care about things like cinematography and stuff like that, which, like this, for example, like the fact that the action scenes go left to right, which I don't feel like like most anime reviewers, even the negative ones like Snob,
Would notice.
or care about really. I
Yeah.
mean, to be fair, that, like if you're watching anime, like you're probably used to seeing like some ugly looking shit, low
Yeah.
budget, cost
Yeah.
cutting. So maybe that's why. Whereas there's this crop of people when it comes to movies who care a lot about the visuals. I mean, when it comes to anime, when people care about the visuals, usually what they care about, it seems to me, is more like the little sakuga moments. So
Yeah.
not the whole thing. People are satisfied if they get like a few pretty places here and there. Um, okay, I mean, the action. Okay, I already read that. I've not read any any of T. Lawrence's original writing, but I would be surprised, would be very surprised to learn he was such a crashing, pompous beau and bigot as the film. So the character in the film is so deeply unlikable as to immediately nullify my suspension of disbelief. My mind keeps interrupting my concentration as it asks how anyone can be inspired to follow this idiot. But the point is that not many people are inspired to follow him, right? And I mean, I did kind of find him a little bit annoying at the very start.
But
Um,
that's by
yeah,
design.
yes.
It's intentional.
Yeah. So many say that Peter O'Toole's portrayal is magnetic, compelling, heroic, and so on in this film. I say this. I say his acting suggests that he's completely bewildered by what the character is supposed to be like. So he has just settled for acting mad and unpleasant whilst staring distractedly into space. I mean, he's supposed to be like a dreamer character, so of course he would be staring into space and look a little bit mad to
Yeah.
other people. Um, so the next point is many say, okay, I already read that. Goggles on a bush. What's that about? Goggles on a bush. How much more obvious and cliched can you get?
Uh,
What's this about? Explain it
I
to me.
don't know.
You don't
I
know.
don't. I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
care.
So that's where Alec Guinness got his inspiration for Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's asking. Okay. And apparently that's the reason to dislike it. um, so coming in at just under 47 hours in length, this film is just too long. Simply taking out Omar Sharif's entrance scene would trim 24 hours from the running time. I think it's just taking the piss now.
Yeah.
Ideally, a 90-minute cut would be just about watchable. I don't
Oh
know.
my gosh.
Maybe because I'm used.
No.
Yeah, I mean,
Nope.
maybe because I'm used to binging anime, like watching 20 or 30 episodes a day.
Mm.
It doesn't. I've never felt bothered by 2 or 3 hour, or even 4 hour films like Love
They can
Express.
get to me,
They
but
can
not a film like this.
Okay. What about you, George? Do you?
I
Can they get to you when they're too long?
I would say it depends on the direction. I mean, if it's just meandering with no direction, then yes, it would drag. Or if it feels like, oh, this director is just showing off for the sake of showing off, then yeah, you could easily notice.
Yeah, it wouldn't be cricket, not to mention the good points of the film. Cricket as in the sport, not you know how because cricket is supposed to be like a gentleman's sport where like there's a lot of sportsmanship and so on. Unlike soccer or football, whatever you want to call it, it wouldn't be cricket not to mention the good points of the film as well. And they can be summarized in just 2 words. And those 2 words are Claude Rains. I think that's one of the actors, probably. I don't know who that is. Claude Rains. That's Claude Claude, and Rains. Okay. My vote for most overrated film ever made. Oh God.
Yeah.
Okay. I
I
think we got the point. I think I don't feel like
Yes.
nobody. I don't feel like anybody really made a good point. I guess maybe this is just because people expect these days probably expect people to act in like a more realistic, or more subdued at least. Well, not really, because a lot of characters
No.
these days are extremely needlessly snarky for some
Over the
reason.
top.
Uh,
Yes, and
Yeah.
amped and yelling and yes.
yeah, I think the biggest thing is the snark for some reason.
Yes.
Maybe it happened with Marvel, or maybe it was an even earlier thing. It probably came from television. I imagine, because the Marvel movies were affected a lot by television, from what I feel. But for some reason, all the characters talk like Tony Stark for some reason, from the Avengers movies. But I guess I mean, were the characters snarky in this? There was
No.
not
Never.
never. Maybe
Never.
Faisal a bit. No.
No. Like maybe the American, but that's why he's a fish out of water.
I think it's because the characters here, as I've said over and over again, act more like in a play almost, like like a lot of things get said bluntly, and I don't know how to explain it, but that's different from how it is now, isn't it? Even though the characters now are certainly over the top. I don't know. It's like the characters here are speaking like they're about to give a soliloquy or something, I guess, or a monologue almost. Which doesn't make any sense, so I'll stop there. Yeah, I couldn't find a single good negative review. I don't know. Maybe if this was my anime list, somebody would make at least
Something of a point.
Yeah, because
Anyways.
there are a lot of reviews which are here just like one line, just a paragraph.
Yeah. Anyways.
The film is against Arabs or it's homophobic.
I was hoping you'd find one of those. I guess you didn't.
Yeah. Okay. Did you find the film? Okay, I see.
Go back.
I gotta get going.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, let's end the stream there. I'll give it an 8 out of 10. And